I will talk a little bit about my itinerary and the company I work for, which is DK, which is part of the Penguin Group, and then discuss different aspects about ebooks and the user experience that they provide. I started working in. Isn't it? Oh, it's that one. Can you hear me better now? Yeah. I started working as a graphic designer for print. And before I came here to do the course at the college on digital media production, which opened up a lot of possibilities at the time, and was a very exciting moment to be able to start doing things that other people didn't quite have the skills for. But I found working in publishing that publishing was still mainly print at the time, so there wasn't that many opportunities in the digital side yet. So I worked along with the technical team and the designers at Dorling Kindersley, and then moved on to run a conversion project where we turned old books into sort of newer software, XML, ebooks. And later on I've got to focus on the ebook side of things, so I manage the strategy and the research and development on the ebook side of things at Dorling Kindersley, and also generally look at providing different solutions for the teams that are looking for innovative ideas and what they can do with their content and how to provide a good experience with their digital products. A little bit about Dorling Kindersley. Well, I did this slide a few weeks ago, before there was a lot of talk about the change in the company. But basically, Dorling Kindersley has been around since the 70s. They are a very well-established international publisher that translate books into 51 languages. They have offices in different places. So they have the main office is in London, but they also have an office in New York. Really big office in Delhi, Germany, Australia, Canada, so big established company. And in the year 2000 they got bought by Penguin, which is even bigger because they translate over 100 countries and they have all these other imprints that I'm not sure we'll be able to see right at the bottom there. But they're big publishing group, and in time they belong to Pearson, which is a huge global media and learning umbrella that is in the FTSE 100, employs over 30,000 people all over the world, and not only has Penguin Group in their umbrella, but they also have the Financial Times Group and a lot of different education content. So huge. It's just pretty much as big as you can get in terms of publishing and media in global terms. This is all going to change very soon. In fact, the Pearson are now merging with Random House, so this will look very different for me next year. But at the moment, that's how it is. Basically, with DK, what they specialize in is highly illustrated content. So they provide design-driven content for all sorts of genres, and for children, for adults. And what made a mark for them in the 70s was their lexicographic style, which was a way of describing things that would be complex, difficult to understand in a visual way that would make them much more accessible. And the idea with the digital side is to take that same accessibility and visual description into the digital side. And we've moved on from being just purely a book publisher, a print publisher, into being a multi-platform content provider as well as publisher. So not only we are just printing books and publishing books, but also we are licensing content, bits of content that could be from across different series or different books, out for web licensing, for in-flight entertainment, mobile companies. There's a huge number of places where our content gets to. So our role over the past 5 years has changed dramatically. ebooks. Well, we all know ebooks it's anything basically that any books that are read electronically. So that just basically the wide range goes from PDFs, or could be a scanned series of images that are stringed together in a book, into very complex, interactive, animated pieces of work that very much behave like an app. So there is a vast array. So I'll just give you a little bit of a taste of different types, what they look like, and the user experience that they provide. I'll start a bit with the devices that are out there. Basically, the players that we've had, the major players so far, have been mainly Apple, Amazon, and in the US also Nook. Clearly, there's also Android tablets out there and Android phones, and all of those vary greatly in the size of their screen sizes. So they have, a lot of them are as small as 4-inch screens, and some of them go up to 10, even bigger tablets. So we are providing, when we talk about ebooks, we're talking about providing something in a really different outputs. So the players so far have been Apple, that have, with their iPads coming out, they made a big mark on the ebook market, and especially for us, an highly illustrated publisher, where it gave us the opportunity to do things that look good on a page. Because until the iPad came out, our books could never have their justice made on, say, on a Kindle device, which was black and white, much smaller. But with the iPad, we saw the possibilities. This is really going to change our prospect here. And so that's happened not only to us, but to many other publishers. So big mark there. And clearly the functionality that the iPad offers as well, which is the same as the iPhone functionality pretty much, is applied, and the iPod Touch means that we can really make our content interactive. Amazon, what Amazon has is that everybody has everybody can afford a Kindle, e-ink Kindle. It's not an expensive device. People have it on the tube, on their pocket, and so for our content, it means that we are reaching a really wide audience. But it doesn't give us the possibility, well, it didn't give us the possibility of having our graphics in the way that we'd like to use them. But then Kindle came up with a Touch, the Kindle Touch, which is still black and white, but then also the Kindle Fire, which is a color device, the DX, which is a big tablet, and again, that's starting to be quite interesting, because we are able now to display our content in color devices for other platforms than Apple as well. The Nook also had a good color tablet that where we can take our content to, and also have things like the Sony Reader, who've been out for a while, and Android devices like, say, the Samsung Galaxy is a really good one for reading content of our kind. And then on the right-hand side, I've got all the new devices on the market, and it's new because actually they're all out either they started coming out a couple of weeks ago, and they're coming out this week. There's some coming out next week and the week after, all in the ramp-up for Christmas. All these new devices are emerging. The iPad mini is already out, so again, same functionality as the iPad, but just a smaller version. Kindle Paperwhite, which is a sort of follow-on from the e-ink Kindle, which means it's still a black and white device, a little bit bigger, things look a little bit better, and we'll be able to read novels, stuff like that, and also see some graphics, but just black and white. So wouldn't make justice to, say, a cookery book or something like that, where you really need that color to come through. But they also have the Fire and the Fire HD 7-inch coming out in the US and the UK, which means that we're going to be able to not only look at books, but also movies and things like that. So these devices are now also really looking at the video market and how to exploit that. So in one same tablet, you're able to look at books, apps, and video content. Nook also are getting their new devices out before Christmas, and a lot of them have their new inbuilt light. So that's a new thing that they're coming out with this year. The the simple touch glow lights for Nook, and I think I've seen the adverts on the tube that say you can read at night or take it to bed with you, sort of thing. So that's the angle that they're bringing in, and Kobo Glow as well, inbuilt light. And Google are coming out, well, they're bringing out their Nexus, different range of Nexus tablets, the 7-inch, the 10-inch, and the smaller ones. And again, Google Play is playing really strong there, so that's another major player. And not to forget the Windows 8 tablets, there's a whole range of them coming out, and that's going to really change the scape, I think, in the next few months. So there's a little bit of a taste of the different devices that are coming out. But basically, there are really huge differences between them, and not only in the size of the screen, but also in the functionality that they offer. And having new devices constantly emerging means that we have quite a few angles, quite a few variables to take into account, like the hardware on one side, whether it's a color or black and white screen. So is it more for graphic stuff, or is it more for reading novels? Screen sizes, as we said, the shape of the screen as well. Is it more square, or is it more landscape? Can they work with audio and video, and therefore can you have animated stuff? Or is there a touch screen? Are there touch screen? Can you really interact directly with it and make things happen? All this really determines how far we can take it with the ebooks, and clearly different platforms are running there. So the iOS platform that Apple uses has quite different, it's quite a different base than say Android or what Windows will provide. So all this is out there, and also to top it up, the formats that are supported by different manufacturers and different platforms really do behave in very different ways. You have some that are able to do read aloud or text to speech, which is basically the book is read to you by it's highlighting the words that you look that are being said. So very useful for kids to learn, or for people with sort of a karaoke style. You can do many different things with it. Also, touch events means that you can double tap to open up windows, or you can pan and zoom across the screen, and suddenly there's infinite possibilities with what you can do with certain formats on EPUB. So I was trying to think how to summarize what the issues, well, the potential and the issues with ebooks are, and sort of I've categorized them in 3 challenges. The first challenge is the design, the layout of it. On one side you have the option of having something that reflows, and on the other side I've got something that is fixed. As you can see, it looks quite different, so I'll go a little bit more into detail. A reflowable EPUB, basically, you have a layout that will change with every screen size or every screen shape, and where the user can control the size of the text. So every time that changes, the whole page will reflow, and therefore how it looks is going to be quite different, and I'll show you a few samples in a bit. The beauty of this, so in one, on the downside, the publisher cannot control how it is going to look very much, but the beauty of it is that you have one unique file that can be used across the whole board. So you have one single file that can go to Apple, Amazon, Nook, and you can be sure that everybody is going to be able to look at it and without any problems. So just to give you a few snippets of how it looks, on the right-hand side, left-hand side, you have how we had our original content looking, and that was a starting point. We wanted to create an ebook from that. When we took it to a reflowable, we have things like, I'm going to have to come up, I hope you can hear me, but things like that, where you cannot bring into the page in the same way, because this is much, much smaller as a screen, so you can't view a big page content that's tiny and you can appreciate really well on a print book onto a screen where you haven't got enough space for all of that to happen, and also the user can blow up the text if they want to, so you lose the overall context. So you have to put those 2 graphics on a completely separate page, which means that you have to probably rethink all your content to make it meaningful. because this is talking about, say, the muscles that you're working on while you're doing this exercise. But if the muscles are not on the same page, is there much point in having them, or do you want to just take it off altogether? So having a thing, content put in a reflowable format means that you have to really think hard of the meaning of that content. Because it might be that half of it needs to go, because there's no point in having it there, because the way in which it relates to each other. So this is how it looks in a black and white. Again, the muscles, they're color-coded depending on how hard they're working on this exercise. They're in gray there, so again, is there much point in having that on the ebook? Can you hear me okay at the back? Yeah. So there's another printed example there, well, the same printed example, and that's how it looks on the iPhone. So you can only fit that much in out of all that lot. That you'd be on one page in the book, and that equivals to 4 screens on an iPhone. And if you put it horizontally, then you're having things like that. You have to have your image cut in half, otherwise it's so small you can't really appreciate it. So do you want to have that as a reflowable book? So these are the sort of challenges that you face with. There's just another example of the same thing. That graphic looks amazing there. When you start breaking it down into small formats where it gets separated with a heading, and it's almost pointless. So certain content really doesn't do very well on reflowable. So the fixed layout is a completely different ballgame. Is the other end of the spectrum. You control completely as a publisher or as a developer how it's going to look, which means that the user cannot do anything with it apart from turning the pages or interact with it if there is interactivity. The only issue with it is that it will not fit. Obviously, you have one fixed format that is not going to fit all the different shape screens. So you're always going to have, in certain devices, you're going to have white spaces on the sides that are not used, or at the top and bottom. And the only way around that will be to recreate another file that is specifically targeting that device. So you could end up with having, for one same book, 5, 6 different versions that are catered for different devices, and you have to not only create those files, but then distribute them in different channels. So it's a very, very different ball game altogether. But what it does, though, is it allows things to look really good, and also to do a lot more interactivity with it. Takes me to the next point, which is, so I'm just going to try and plug this in. Hopefully that will do it. It's holding. The second challenge, which is the format. So we've looked at the reflowable formats. Again, very standard, everybody can read it, easy to create as well. And then we have things like the Amazon KF8 file, which can do, is like a reflowable file, but it allows you to magnify certain areas of text and images that you have predefined. So you could have a book that is turning pages normally, and then you can sort of double click on something and it opens up and fills that screen to be to show an image, for example, or to show the detail of text if it is a children's book that you need them to read. So they've done something that is, again, exciting, but it's only for Amazon. It doesn't work with any other platform. On the EPUB side, the fixed format side that we were showing before, Apple are really the ones that are able to take it further than anybody else. We have generally fixed format means control over how it looks, but in the case of Apple, it really means really high interactivity, and it means that you can enhance with video, with audio, with touch events. You can do a lot with it, and you can incorporate all these different technology that EPUB 3 is allowing, like HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, etc. the downside to it is to do all those things, you're obviously going to need coding skills to be able to take it through. So it's not something that a non-technical person will be able to do. And very cleverly, Apple got a different format out, which is the IBA format, which is something that allows non-technical users to do from home. It's a free application that comes with the system, with the newer systems. And it allows to plug in functionality, HTML5 functionality and 3D functionality into the book in a very easy user interface. And the only restriction is that you need to only have that functionality within widgets, within particular areas on the screen. So it's something that it's a good option for the non-publishers or the people who are not specialized in interactive or all those skills that are used on the other fixed format EPUBs. And then the Nook has two formats of their own. The EPIB, they call it, which is for children again, that magnifies areas of text and image. And the Picture Perfect, which is based on PDF. PDF would seem to be a good format because you have control over how it looks. But the issue with PDF is it's very easy to pirate, so they have to work hard on the way to protect that. And that's what Nook Picture Perfect are doing. They are sort of rasterizing it as they render it on the device, so it's not as easy to pirate. Just a little bit of a taste of the different formats, and basically the sort of conclusion from this is that you can, if you really want to have a very sort of highly developed product that has a lot of interactivity, you're not going to be able to just provide one file that works for all. It's going to have to be different files for each of them, and each of those files will need to be created quite a lot from scratch with different technology, with different tools. And so there is a lot of work to do if you want to do something that is really pushing the boundaries and taking it out there. I guess before this I'm going to show you a couple of examples, because laptop, is it? When people think of ebooks, they often think of novels or something quite static, but actually, in reality, as I said, an ebook, especially EPUB fixed formats, can do a lot more than that. So this is an example of a book. There was a children's book that was done for print, which we took. Don't know if you can appreciate, but actually, there is movement there in the background at the bottom. So that bomb is actually alive, and you can do things like you can get to see step by step the chemical reaction that goes on with the atomic bomb. You can do things like, if it lets me, it's going to crash on me, isn't it? No. You can do things like looking in different areas, the chemicals, what's happening, and the sound actually is really important on those sort of examples. Things like that. You can have a piece of gold that twinkles when you touch it. So you can do a lot of functionality when the bomb goes, as you read in it. Obviously, there's the hard thing, which you can blow up. It's not connected. So yeah, before most people, when they see things like this, they expect this to be an app, because the behavior is getting more and more close to an app, but actually it's just an ebook file. So I wanted to show you another sample as well. This is, as you can see, this is a work in progress. This is a sample that we're working to develop, so it's not a finished product. Also, you can have for children, you can have things that the whole concept of the book is for the children to guess what animal is behind the viewfinder, so they can drag the viewfinder to look at and try and guess what animal it is. And then once they worked out what animal it is, or they had a guess at it, they can turn the page and then they can see the animation of the animal. So all those, and obviously the buttons at the top are all navigational, and you can go from one and see the different animals that are out there, and has different functionality. So this is just two examples of what you can do with an EPUB. Right, so basically what you are faced with generally is, I mean, I've got a lot more samples that are quite fun to see, but what you generally faced with is the big dilemma of the publishers, which is, do they want to take their content in a way that will be, you'll get one file that reaches a really wide market, and it's a standard, a lower common denominator file that reaches everywhere, like could be a reflowable EPUB, or do you want to work really hard to make something that looks amazing and that has a lot of interactivity, like the kinds of things I've shown you now, which means that you're going to have to do all these multiple versions. Each of these you're going to have to work up from scratch, and it's a really time-consuming, and it's a big job basically, and it's a constant dilemma we face with our content. Do we want to just send one file everywhere, everybody can read it, no problems, or do we want to have constant development in improving files, or in changing and doing a new file for each new device that comes up, which is happening all the time. So we have quite a lot ourselves where we're doing interactive stuff, and we have to have 5 different versions of the same book. And it's not 5 forever, it's 5 now, but it's 6 tomorrow, it's 7 the day after, and it never stops, because you can't, there's always going to be something that changes, or new functionality around the corner, or a new device that you need to adapt for. So that's the key dilemma that we have. And the third challenge generally on ebooks is the user experience, because as we've seen, there is so many different functionalities and ways in which you can develop things that it means that you're opening a big can of worms. Everybody knows how to turn a page on a printed book. There's no doubt about it. You present a book, everybody can do it. But with ebook devices, each ebook device has different functionality, and also there is basically you're never going to find one person who knows all the functionality of a device. And that goes for very expert users, super users, developers, even the manufacturers of their own devices don't, and I can vouch for that, don't always know the functionality, because there's always something new, something being in development, something that they're not aware of. So if that being the case means that you can never exploit that fully and count on users exploiting that, because in most cases it's a very sort of unknown quantity, and even if you had 2 users that had exactly the same understanding and expectation of a product, they still use the device differently. There's no 2 users that is going to use it the same way, so you do need to use to put things to the test and to user test them. So that's what usability is doing, is looking at how those products function. Do they function as they were originally intended, or do they just function in a completely different way? One example of this is you could spend months and months in doing a really amazing innovative development or functionality that you're adding to your ebook, and you show people and everybody goes, wow, this is amazing, we really want to include that. But then if you take it to the users without doing it for them, you might find that they completely miss out on that piece of functionality that you've done. So you may have spent thousands and thousands of pounds on something that will go completely unnoticed. And you need to really put it to the test to know how people are going to use it, because you might find that the users use it in a different way, or actually they don't like it because they find it really irritating, because it's not the way they would normally use it. So user experience becomes really key on all the interactive ebooks particularly, but also generally on all ebooks, because they all need to be navigated, they all have a table of content, and all users will need to find the right page for the right content. So you can't expect them to do that without having really user tested. And again, because functionality like navigation or content work differently in different devices, so you need to put it out to the test. Generally, just to sort of start summing up a little bit, I think the changes that publishers face with ebooks are, a lot of them are cultural, in that trying to think outside the printed book and not stop thinking about book first, but start thinking of content, neutral platform content. So that's the main change, and with that means that they're going to lose some of the beauty of the printed book, but they're also going to gain a lot of functionality, bringing things to life in a different way that goes much beyond the book. So this is still, although we have been doing it for a long time now, it's still finding that people who are used to working with books find this quite difficult to think of content rather than book content. And also think when they're describing the content page, for example, they need to think about in a way that it's going to work across different platforms, not only on a printed book, but where people can hold pages with their fingers while they turn pages forwards and backwards, but they'll need to think of, do they provide a bookmark facility or all those things. And again, it's all to do with the interactivity and how different users use those features. And clearly there is a long process of adaptation with all sorts of aspects, not only the technical aspect, but in terms of copyrights, it's not the same. A picture will not have the same meaning on a printed book than would on, say, on an ebook, where, as we've seen before, things may reflow in a completely different page. So the photographer might want to have new copyright version, and same things happen with a copy. And because things look different on different devices, you probably have to copyright it in a completely different angle, so you can cover your back on all the different areas. Obviously, marketing is, again, completely different ballgame. Social media play a really huge part to it. So that's new arenas that we're all finding out about. And the workflows need to change as well. They need to be often, as we were saying, not thinking of book first and then digital, but thinking of content first, as neutral as possible to start with, in a sort of lower common denominator, and then take it from there to do the different spins off on different books, different ebooks. So that these are the skills that are normally used and the tools that we use for producing ebooks. HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript and Flash, those are the ones that are most used for all these interactive books that I've shown you. But obviously things like XML and having a good content management system with that works with the database and the transformations that this product needs to become an ebook, and all the different proprietary tools that different manufacturers have available, like Amazon have their Kindle Gen, Apple have their IBA Author, the Nook Builder, etc. And also things like the Creative Suite, the Adobe Creative Suite, have also a lot of export facilities for EPUB and Kindle now. So there is already a lot you can do with your sort of standard design software. You don't always need specialized, especially for reflowable ebooks. And just to sum up, last slides, the future, well, clearly, as I said, is a constant evolution of e-readers out there and the functionality that they support. So that's going to be always changing. We cannot expect just one format to be established and dominate. I don't think that's going to happen. Not for a long, long time, or never, I would say. So we have to be always ready. separation between ebooks and apps will blur more because it's already being quite blurred at the moment. But at the moment you buy your ebooks from the iBook store and your apps from the App Store, for example, but you can have an ebook that is actually read via, is actually on an app, on the shape of an app. And you can also have an app that is simply wrapping up an ebook. Or you could have a web-based ebook that is read online but also can be wrapped as an app. So all these things are crossing over and boundaries are getting more and more fuzzy. Equally, the device apps with the web apps and the desktop apps, like Kindle, for example, they have the Kindle viewer for the Kindle reader for their own devices, and that's different to the one that they have on the web and for the desktop. And they also have Kindle reader for the app, for the iPad. So Apple have their own ebook reader for Kindle. So it's all starting to get quite mixed up, and it will continue to be the case. So all this, I think, will tend to merge into a more perhaps cohesive or standardized way. And also the platforms in which we are delivering our content are more likely to diversify further. Like you could expect to have children's books, say, on a Wii console or on a different DS, Nintendo, or whatever it is. I mean, anything is possible. We're not just thinking content for iPads or for printed books. It goes a lot further than that. And the way in which we pay for things. Are we purchasing a book, or can we rent a book, or can we borrow a book from someone? We buy something you can share with your best friend. That's a model that is already pages a year. It could be something like Spotify. You just download it as you need it and go back up with advertisement. So there's all these new models out there that are starting to go into play, and we'll see a lot of that changing our landscape in future, I'm sure. And clearly the value that we give to our books, e-books, compared to, say, the value that our apps have. An app takes a lot of development time, and not many people will pay more than 99p for an app. Whereas a book could be quite simple to do. For example, a reflowable ebook can be done quite easily, and sometimes it retails for $6.99. So the content could actually be the same, but it's just because the way in which it's marketed and the route it's taking, the channel, it has a completely different value, perceived value. So I think that's already starting to change. That balance will change, and it will definitely be different in a few years' time. And clearly the roles will change as well. So we have lots of new roles and transformed roles from where we are now. So that's all from me. I think I've overrun probably. So probably no time for questions, I imagine. Print has a different value. The print book, the luxury. Items, the perceived value again, but it's just a lot more, maybe the space or the it will change, but I don't think it's ever going to disappear. And especially already integrated. For example, our books, we have often the same people who buy our print books will also buy our e-books, and the other way around. Because you may, for your child, for example, you may want to have your book when you're reading on the go, but maybe when you're at home, you want to actually have it. So I think they're already. Also, you can have things like a but then you can have a link to a downloadable app that you can have on your phone that is connected to that book, that gives you a little bit more content or the updates on that. So for example, if you have a science book that we're working on, a science and medical book, you can have an app, you can download it, and that will keep updating as developments happen, whereas the book remains that basic concept. So yeah, I think they're already integrating, and I don't think print is going to go away, but it's likely to become more of a, maybe a more of a luxury thing than it is now. Create a book. It's a really good question, because in some we kind of have to, what I was saying, some of our books, and it also depends a lot on how it's being marketed and how it enters, what channel it goes in. And we have some books where we've released the ebook version, and that's not done so well comparatively compared to the print version. And we have other books, like we have a reading series of children's series that are graded in different levels, and they do phenomenally well as ebooks, and that have gone much beyond our expectation. It's selling hundreds and thousands every month, and that's continuously. And it's a growing series, so clearly an example of that, and that's doing really well compared to many examples where they're balanced out, and where the ebook is exactly because the reading series is with a book range is a book series. It's already a very well established thing, and it's a text to sync to audio syncs with a text, so you can see the highlighted words. So that went really well, and maybe say, for example, the ideas with a viewfinder. Maybe people are not expecting that from ebooks, so it's not to say that maybe when they are discovered and appreciated, they'll do really well. But at the moment, it's still trying to find its space, and people are not so much expecting interactivity from an ebook in that way. So maybe that's why things are not quite taking off. But it does vary. It really does. So you mean as an ebook content, or yeah, that's a good point actually. I mean, one thing that we're thinking of packaging our books in an app that you can download. So say you could buy an app for somebody, and then they know that they're going to have certain books there, like a sort of a voucher system or something like that. We are to and see how it can be, but unfortunately that's much more in the hands of people like Google and Amazon, and how they present their values, because they are the ones that they're obviously the major players, and they're the ones that have our channel, the distribution channel for our content. And whether they decide that a different way of, it goes back to what I was saying about the micropackaging or the lending and the gifting. So it's to do with how Apple and Amazon that model onto them. They're going to be the ones that we can do it this way or not, and we can only provide the content in the end. That's our goal. You can do things you can decide to like an ad will go in different channels. How that sold to the customer will be saying those two examples we are doing things like this, or like having links on the web that you can to buy it.